Once again, jurors gathered in a federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan. That's to determine the fate of longtime former State Assembly Speaker Sheldon Silver, a man who for years was among the most powerful men in New York State, the so-called one of the three men in the room. He had the leverage and the ability to push or block almost any legislation that he chose. But the question is, did Silver use that power for his own advantage and to enrich himself? Well, the jury in 2015 said he did. But after an appeals court overturned that decision, Silver, he's on trial once again. And our own Dominic Carter, who was in the courtroom then, was in the courtroom now as well. He was there earlier today. Dominic?
And good evening to you, Richard. Sheldon Silver left here a little more than an hour ago, proclaiming his innocence. Are you nervous? Are you worried?
I think anybody who's in the courthouse has to be nervous and worried, no matter what.
Right out the gate, different narratives during opening arguments. Prosecutors are accusing Silver of collecting $4 million in illegal kickbacks, mostly through an alleged scheme with the cancer researcher Dr. Robert Taub. Pointing at Silver, prosecutor Damian Williams said, quote, "For 2 decades, this man, Sheldon Silver, was one of the most powerful politicians in all of New York. Because of that power, he was practically untouchable. He was also corrupt." Describing a quid pro quo with Dr. Taub, Williams went on to say, quote, "You scratch my back, I scratch yours." Dr. Taub was Silver's golden goose. At the heart of the government's case, the feds allege Silver directed $500,000 in state grants to Taub at Columbia University. And Taub, who did work on mesothelioma, a rare form of cancer caused by exposure to asbestos, referred those lucrative legal cases to Silver's law firm at the time, Whites and Luxembourg. Silver's lawyer, Michael Feldberg, told jurors that prosecutors could not prove that Silver agreed to engage in official acts in exchange for payment, echoing the language of the 2016 U.S. Supreme Court decision that led to Silver's conviction being overturned. Feldberg also stressed that Silver had revealed all of the payments at issue on income disclosure forms required by the state. The evidence will show there is no corrupt agreement in this case, Feldberg said. There is no quid pro quo. There is no bribe. The very first witness, Assemblywoman Amy Paulin of Westchester County. The feds have also accused Silver with supporting a real estate developer's interest on rent legislation and tax abatements. She voted against the bill. A frail 82-year-old Dr. Taub testified Silver asked him to refer his mesothelioma patients to him so Silver could profit from the cases.
Case will be tried in the courtroom, not in the media.
So, Dominic, what is the conventional wisdom that you're hearing at the courthouse? On one hand, you say, hey, prosecution convicted him before, and it got thrown out on a technicality. Conversely, the conviction was overturned here, and there arguably could be a higher hurdle for the prosecution to cover. Which way do most people think this will most likely go?
Well, honestly, we don't know, Richard. I'm glad you asked that question because it is the million-dollar question, and it is in the hands of those 12 jurors. If you want to, Richard, go by what's actually been said, as you well know, Richard, in the appellate decision, they said that there was ample evidence there to show, quote, an official act that was done by Silver. Judge Caproni said exactly the same thing when she sentenced Silver. But let's keep in mind the definition of quid pro quo, of official act. The Supreme Court in that 2016 McDonald ruling narrowed the definition. And so we will see how Judge Caproni is going to charge this jury, because that is the key element. And so, Richard, you know, it was a bit surreal to sit in the courtroom today because it was less than a month ago, as you know, Richard, the same exact courtroom on the 4th floor here, the Pococo case, the same exact judge. And what was also interesting, Richard, the prosecutor in Prococo, they pointed at Prococo making the allegations. Was Sheldon Silver sitting there today? Guess what, Richard? They did exactly the same thing. Now, this is an entirely different set of prosecutors for the federal government. None of the same crew that did the first Silver trial. It's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. Richard, I would like to point out to you, though, that Mr. Silver, at one of the breaks, he said, "Hello, Dominic," waved. And so we haven't had an opportunity to talk to him one-on-one just as of yet, but it is coming. And I found it interesting, Richard, that during lunch a few hours ago, Silver walked out of this courthouse and went to get coffee, knowing very well that we would be out here waiting for him. And so that's when he proclaimed his innocence. We'll see what happens, Richard.
Yes, now, as you said, the opening statement phase underway. Dominic, great job as always. Thank you so much. Now, when we come back, it's a scene that's been playing out in state after state after state. Teachers striking over pay and cuts in funding really impacting their ability to do their jobs. And it's interesting, some of the governors now that are actually rallying to the teachers' defense. We're going to have much more on that right after this.